Hey everyone, welcome to episode 119 of the Ceres podcast. I'm your host Stelios and the founder and director of Ceres Pure Food Innovation. We have been talking a lot about Christmas for some time now, and it just feels really close now. It feels like, we're at the beginning of the month, you can almost touch it. I do feel weird talking about Christmas all the time, but we've been talking about it since September at Ceres. We've been doing a lot of cooking of the festive recipes, taking photos, and then there's planning logistics over December and looking at opening hours. So yeah, it's nice that it's actually here because it's just been in our mind for so long. You do get also pretty sick of eating Christmas food in September and October. When we were taking all those photos for the festive recipes, we had to try them. I gave a load of those pinwheels to like the FedEx driver, and he took them with him, and it was just like he was just thinking, "What am I eating Christmas food in December, in October for?" But it is one of those things that people don't realise. And I was watching this episode with Jamie Oliver, and they do a lot of their Christmas stuff in July, and you've just got to think, you can see how, we're just a small company, but you can see how big companies really think far ahead when it comes to Christmas. So why not take inspiration by some of those recipes that we've all put together? Christmas is such a good time to build up goodwill and grow your customer base by being generous and dishing out some really tasty food. I think it is a good time to do things that aren't just about profit, because it can be really good with customers. It really strikes a chord. We hope everyone who made a purchase from our online store in November is liking their free Christmas labels. We find, again, it's the little things that count, and we're just passing on a little bit of that festive spirit. So once a month, as you know, we send out an email with an offer. If you want to join our mailing list, then head over to the show notes and you can join the mailing list there. We recently also chose some random customers from the online store. They each won a great Marks & Spencer's hamper. To them and everyone, thank you so much for your support. That's 3 customers this year, and we actually chose 3 customers last year. We hope we can make this a regular thing too, to be honest. Every Christmas, why not? So this isn't the end of everything. We think we've still got a few more festive ideas up our sleeve. We are planning something fun for over Christmas. We're just planning it, so we've got nothing solid to announce. But if you're not, make sure you are following us on Facebook, because that's where we're going to do it all. We won't be working our normal hours over the festive period, so if you do want any stock, make sure you get it ordered ahead of time. As you may have noticed, we have started slotting these ads at the beginning of the podcast. We will never insert ads in the middle to break the conversation. Now is a great time to start a boil-out routine for your fryers. If you have plans to close down over Christmas, why not start with an end-of-year boil-out, or even a beginning the new year boil-out? The Ceres Deep Fryer Cleaner was formulated to work in all deep fryers, stainless steel, mild steel, gas and electric. The fact is, the benefits of regular boil-outs are endless. Cleaner pans or fryers give you better oil life, better food quality, better power recovery. There is a reason why the likes of McDonald's, KFC, Burger King, Five Guys and nearly every national global food group that uses fryers boils them out regularly, mostly in between every oil change. It works on all frying ranges and all commercial fryers. Think of it like this: if the vessel is dirty, how can you fry clean tasting food? Going one step further, how can you add new oil to a dirty fryer? Can you afford not to have a regular boil-out routine? Order your Ceres Deep Fryer Cleaner today at theworldofceres.com. Today's guest is John Barnes. John has co-authored a book called Altering Course, The COVID Chronicles, with Laura Cowan of Rockfish Restaurants. It's a collection of short stories about how companies, individuals and organisations found new ways to navigate their way through the pandemic. Hawksmoor, Rockfish and Pizza Pilgrims all feature in the book, alongside some other great companies and organisations. John has had a long career in hospitality, which started as the managing director of KFC Great Britain in the early 1980s. He was the chairman of Harry Ramsden's for 11 years and has been a non-executive director of several well-known pub and bar chains. John and Laura are both directors of Rockfish, who have sponsored the book. All proceeds go to the charity Mind. We have bought, Ceres, 10 copies of Altering Course. Those will go to the first 10 people that get in touch with us. We will send out the copy free of charge. Just get in touch with us at info@worldofceres.com. Anyway, on to the episode with John. I really hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to get John back on again in the future to discuss his work life and career. John, welcome to the Ceres podcast.
Nice to be here.
It's great to have you. I have heard so much about you from numerous people, so it's just an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Oh, I thank you. At my advanced age, it's nice to be asked out.
How old are you, like 49, 50?
That'll do.
Well, you look great anyway.
Thank you.
But obviously, you had a couple of ropey weeks with COVID, so I am glad you're okay.
Yeah, it's anybody who says I've been double vaccinated. I was a week away from my booster and then got it. And anybody who says it's easy, it's not. It's not nice. And I lost my sense of taste. And if that one thing that has kept me going throughout my life, it's my liking of food and taste. So to lose your taste, I had a cough, and yes, I had a fever, and yes, I had a sore throat, but the worst bit was losing my taste.
Yeah, yeah, that must be really like... Because if you enjoy certain foods and then when you're poorly, you look forward to eating food that you like. And then if you eat it, and let's say it's a soup or a steak or chicken, and it's not got what you're expecting, that must be quite off-putting.
It is. I mean, my wife has no sense of smell anyway. Mm-hmm. She had an accident and lost her sense of smell. She's used to that, but she didn't lose her taste to COVID, and I did. And honestly, food types, you just really realise how bland things are when you take taste away. Yeah. As you know, I've had a period living in the States, and I can honestly say that a lot of the food when I lived in the States in the 70s tasted like the food that I was tasting when I had no sense of taste, but that's a bit rude.
No, it is a thing with American food, though, isn't it? And I read it was like a technical sort of spec sheet once, and it was sort of talking about how most of the American populace don't actually like overly flavoured foods, and that, like, I think it was talking about Domino's pizza, and it was saying like it has to be cheesy, but not too cheesy. It can't taste of strong cheese, because if it does, they won't eat as much. So if it's because our brains react to strong flavours. Yeah. So if we eat something, how much blue cheese can you eat? Well, probably a lot, but it's not the right analogy. But the more you eat, the more you think, I'm full now. Whereas if the food's bland, you can eat more of it. And if you eat more of it, I guess that suits American businesses, doesn't it?
And they spice it up, because a lot of the raw ingredients, particularly in the Midwest where I lived, a lot of the raw ingredients are taken days to get there. And I think the slogan I remember, because as you know, I was in the fish and chip business, and in the US at that time I wasn't, but there was a chain called Long John Silver, and they were running an advertising campaign on television where the claim was, "Our fish doesn't taste fishy." And I couldn't believe it. I mean, honestly, and it's true, it didn't taste fishy at all. And why would that be? And I asked the people I was working with, and they said, that's because fishy means it's off. Because that's what happened when fish got shipped over from the East Coast all the way into the Midwest over the years. It was off and off. So our fish doesn't taste fishy. And the blandness of food is something that, I really have always fought against. I mean, I just like taste. And so when you lose your taste, it's not nice.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? But at least you're on the mend.
Yes, so. and coming back slower than I would like, but I'm back running. And so, I'm back in action.
You strike me as a highly motivated and not only highly motivated, but you can personally motivate yourself, quite competitive, maybe even with yourself.
I mean, that doesn't change. Although you get to I'm not telling you how old I am, advanced years, that hasn't changed at all.
I think that does yourself a disservice. By saying advanced years, I think people are going to imagine that I'm talking to you on a hospital bed, and that's not the case.
Well, you might have been, but luckily not. No, throughout lockdown, and we're going to talk about our book, one of the reasons that I wanted to do it was because I wanted to keep active and keep reporting. And in fact, we were so busy as a family with our different businesses that I just couldn't even think about the pandemic or lockdown because we just had to keep going. And it was a good feeling because, I still like to be very busy. I've been working, I started proper work in 1970, so this is my 51st year. But I still honestly want to do things and help people who are starting businesses, which I'm doing. And there's nothing more fulfilling. I think there is this sort of nonsense that we grew up with, my generation, of you reach retirement. And I don't understand the concept. I think, retirement is, we're so much healthier than my dad's and mum's generation was. And B, we will live longer, so we want to do more and keep doing it and keep being productive. And, I think that'll keep me going, for years.
I'm only 37, 38. I don't think of retirement. I've never thought about it. I don't think it'll ever come to me. I don't know. It's just I think that for me, maybe at that retirement age, let's say, I'd take more holidays or relax a bit more. But I don't know if I'd ever say, I'm 65, I'm not going to work again.
No, I don't think you will, and I don't think my son and daughter, who are your generation too, that I can't see them ever. It'll be a different concept of the way we do things, but the idea that you did all this work and then you stop and you then do different things. I've been doing different things throughout my life, and I want to carry on doing different things. Hence the title of the book, Altering Course. Altering Course is kind of describes me. I forever, throughout my 50-year career, I've been altering course and trying to do new things.
So where did the concept of altering course, the COVID Chronicles, where did it come from?
We were in lockdown had started. We got Rockfish, which I'm involved with, working with Mitch Tonks and Laura Cowan and the team there. And Rockfish had to shut, and Mitch and I were talking to each other every day. How are we going to survive? What we're going to do? So I got that going, and Mitch, full of ideas, is one of the most creative people I've worked with. All sorts of thoughts about the different things, the different courses we could take. I got my wife's therapy business. 20 years she had been running, and I've been supporting a counselling centre where suddenly the clients who were turning up 1,000 a month all suddenly not able to come to the centre, and we had to find some way to look after them, to support them, so we got that going on. And there we retrained therapists to do it on Zoom, and we were changing direction, altering course. And then my daughter, running a successful local food shop and cafe in Poole called the Local Pantry, her business goes up 4 times as all the people didn't want to go to supermarkets, and suddenly her business is going through the roof, and she's absolutely stretched from pillar to post. And what can we do that's in a different way to get to people, and those people who can't come out, can we deliver to them? Can we change direction? And I was chatting to Laura Cowan, who works at Rockfish, does communications and marketing. And I work closely with Laura. I'm sort of mentor her and support her. And she's a fellow director. And she was describing her contacts and friends and the fact she was volunteering to go and help distressed people, and the organisation she was working with and some of her people she knew. we both said, well, we've got all these stories. I wonder if anybody's going to collect these and write them. And I said to her, well, we could be the Samuel Pepys of COVID. we could write the diaries, and she said, oh, I've always wanted to do a book, and you've done one, haven't you? And I said, yeah, we did 19 years ago, called Marketing Judo. And so I said, look, Laura, why don't we just write these things up, put them together, and see what comes of it? Because if nothing else, I'd like it for my kids so that they have a picture of what we went through, because this is a very unique time. I mean, I've been working a very long time, and I've never seen anything like this. So, and I'm not sure anybody's going to write about the ordinary businesses, the ordinary people, because what they tend to do is write about the bigger businesses or the famous people. And why don't we do it for people we know who have good contacts with people who have stories, and let's see what happens. And that's how it all started. That's where it came from.
And it is interesting because it is a book full of lots of little chronicles. It's not, it's not heavy. I've read it a couple of times over the course of since you've sent it me, and it doesn't feel heavy or. I like business books. It is a business book, but it's more of a social business book, if that makes sense. It's telling us about what other businesses went through, and it's not too heavy either. It's not 9 pages of what one business went through, and they're not also trying to teach you anything. They're just telling you about their experience.
Yeah, this is very much where we came from, and it's if you like, it's about the unsung heroes rather than the famous ones. It's scattergun, you could say, because we go from Napa wine, where I know personally somebody from my time in the US who's a director of wineries, to people who can't sing, learning online how to sing, to one of my favourite pursuits is sport, and there's a lovely story of Long Levens Rugby Club near Gloucester, what they did to survive. So we've got, as you'd expect, given my background and my industry, we've got stories on Hawksmoor, a brilliant steak chain in London, Manchester, Edinburgh, and now New York. Pizza Pilgrims in London, and I'm an investor in, absolutely love them. They're the brightest people around, and what they did. We've got some good stories from them. And then Rockfish, very close to my heart, where I've been working with Mitch Tonks at Rockfish for 10 years. He's an absolute inspiration. And what was happening there has just made such a difference to the way we're going to do Rockfish in the future. I mean, without the pandemic, without what happened, we never have contemplated the exciting new things that Mitch and the team are now doing. And so I think the thing Laura and I wanted out of this was that people who felt that they were in trouble, that they were losing hope in their businesses or personally in life, could get this and dig into it and maybe get some ideas and maybe feel more positive at the end of it. And the social distress, I'm not minimizing what was going on in the pandemic, because I literally had it coming into my house with Pat, my wife, taking 5 calls in the morning from distressed clients of the therapy centre who needed help, and she was triaging them out to counsellors who could look after them online. So, I mean, we knew the distress people were in. We knew the mental health issues. And so Laura and I and Mitch then said, look, if we do this and get this book published, then let's get all the proceeds and give them to an organisation that will use them for those people. And we have, and it's Mind, which is where you and I are talking today, Mind in Harrogate, and their programmes. So that so I'm on a mission to sell this book. It's only 10 quid plus £1.50 postage, so I'm going to plug it. And if you go on the Rockfish website, which is www.therockfish.co.uk, and you then can direct yourself to a page that you will find the book. And the book is there, or I hope, Stellius, you'll put it on your...
Well, I was going to talk to you about this after, actually, but what I'm thinking of doing is buying a bundle and doing a little competition and sending it out to some of my followers, customers, whatever.
Thank you. Yeah. That would be brilliant.
Because I have enjoyed it. It's it's nice and easy. So it's just
it's a light read. If you don't get ideas out of it, Laura and I'd be very disappointed. But every 10 quid goes to the people who are running these programs for distressed clients who need support. And so I'm absolutely doing exactly that. We're hosting coffee mornings. We're travelling around. We did a book launch down at Rockfish Exeter. Nice. We got a lot of people turned up for that. So all of the people who are featured in the book are all selling copies to their friends and followers. And we hope to raise a lot of money, because I think it's a lovely thing to be doing. And Mitch Donks of Rockfish has sponsored it, so Rockfish has paid for the publication using his recipe, his book. Mitch has done lots of brilliant books, cookbooks, and his publisher John Croft has published it. So everybody's been really supporting us. We found I wrote and Laura wrote, and then we found a brilliant editor, Anna, who made our stuff look even better, and then a designer who's actually featured in the book, Else, who this is the first book she's done like this, and I think when you see it, the layout, the colours, the whole formats, it's a much more, it's a very different form of book. When I did my last book, Marketing Judo, I gave it to somebody to read. He said to me, "That's not a book, that's a pamphlet." And he actually used another word before pamphlet. So I said, but if it's only a pamphlet to you, I said, it means people can read it on a train journey, read it, when they're stuck in a traffic jam, but stuck at the station. And people did, and it was a 2-hour read. And this, I think, is something, as Laura says, that maybe you have on the table and you dip into. And maybe it's there when we get into the next crisis, because we will. And maybe it's there for people to just say, what did they do then? Maybe we get some thoughts from that. So that's those who know me know that I try not to take myself too seriously. We are not professional authors. This is not to be used on the Harvard curriculum business book. This is written for people like us, and there's some cock-ups in there, things that people did that just didn't work when they were trying to get out of the pandemic, but it's a lot of fun to do. I and Laura interviewed everybody in the book. We did what you're doing with me today. We Zoomed them, and so we had interviews. We then captured and chronicled the interviews and then reproduced them in the book. So these are the words of other people. They're not Laura or I trying to pretend we're experts on this, that, and the other. These are actually stories of what actually happened, and the words that people have actually used. And the other thing about the Altering Course title was that we, being in Rockfish, all by the sea, we are surrounded by avid sailors. Mitch is one, and we sponsor a man called Henry Bomby, who's a 5-time Olympic champion, who's absolutely brilliant. He came to the book launch and did a whole story about his career, and he uses all these metaphors about being at sea and the difficulties, and one of them he says is the perfect storm that signals disaster can also describe the very opposite. Every goal of mine got knocked off course, and yet the new course opened up a different, better destination. And you get words like that out of his mouth that you'd probably read in some other book. You say, well, that's motivation talk, but actually that's what he says. And with any bad news, my aim always is to turn it round so that in a year's time, I'm glad I got that news. And that it resonated strongly with me, because there are times when, actually these were the words of Will Beckett, co-founder of Hawksmoor. He said, the more you feel threatened, the more innovative you become. And there's just so much of that we've just been through in the last 2 years, and people have moved forward years and years and years in their things that they're now doing digitally that they never have done before. And that's all come from this crisis we've been in. But it's spawned a whole new range of brilliant ideas and positive things. And that's on the corporate front. But on the personal, social front, there are all sorts of great things people have done, volunteering, joining organisations. We've got one in the book on compassionate communities, 3SG, and how they form teams of 50 volunteers to go and support people in distress during the pandemic, and the organisation that went into that. I think there was just this upsurge of people wanting to help other people. Mm-hmm. At the vaccination centres, one here at the Yorkshire Showground, the day I went for my vaccination, all the volunteers there, unbelievably helpful, positive, and this feeling of we're all part of a society here where people are genuinely wanting to help each other. And yet there are so many other bits of the political world, the social world, which are divisive, and things that have made us disagree on big political subjects. But suddenly through this, you sense this new feeling of supporting each other and helping each other, and people going out of their way to volunteer for things, which Laura was doing. And we were doing with our own campaigns we were running as a family. And so I just think that there have been so many big shifts that I'm really glad we've chronicled them in this book in the way we have.
I think from a business point of view, when people or companies come so close to disaster, it does reinvigorate them almost, to give them that what is it we wanted to do but didn't do because we was afraid to move, and now it's like, no, let's do it. And I suppose to some degree at Ceres we felt a little bit like that as well, but then once the first sort of lockdown came, it almost gives you this I can't explain it. It's almost like fire in the belly to go and do things. And I think we've innovated more than we ever have. Probably. I think we're an innovative company. I'd like to think so, but I think we've done more in the last year than I probably did in the previous 4 or 5. And would I have done that if I wasn't pushed to? Probably not.
No, I think not. No, I think that's what we've got from all the people we've spoken to, and some extraordinary stories that. And most people had these plans, but they'd never have done it because, as you know, when you're running the day-to-day businesses and you're so stretched, you think about these lovely things you'd want to do, but I'm never going to be able to do that. And suddenly here you've got our restaurants closed, people at home suddenly could stop and rethink and what if, and maybe I might, and in the Napa Valley stories, the wineries, they were all saying that they've moved forward 5 years in their digital marketing, things they just would never have done and have had to do because 50% of their revenues disappeared the moment the bars and restaurants shut. 50%. And you've still got the vines to tend. You've still got all the employees you have to support. I mean, it's not as though, as Van Wagner, who contributed to this, said in his piece on Napa Valley that nature never got the memo about the pandemic, and so you used to have to pay your employees to look at. But what they did was, by arranging virtual tastings, sending wine to people at home, getting people online, Zooming, all these new things that have really transformed the whole side of their business, which they never have done. They wouldn't have had the time to do.
Yeah, I guess if you're an investor anyway, but you'd know a little bit more about them than most. But if Pizza Pilgrims decided a year ago, and there was no COVID, to start sending pizza to people's houses, most people on the board would be like, why are we doing this? Or it'd be like, is this really worth the effort? And let's say they did put the effort in and did a good job, would customers take to it? I think it was the perfect breeding ground of ideas could flourish. Customers at home wanted to try all these different things, and it just everything came as one. And I don't think that melting pot was there before. No,
you're absolutely right. We'd never. I've been non-executive director on many boards or chairman of different things, and I would have said, if Tom and James had come to me with that, I would absolutely said, keep focused. This is going so well. We're opening really successful restaurants. I mean, you guys are amazing. You might have that on the side, but no, don't get distracted. And yet, what happened was this completely innovative, sending a kit to people at home, and then having to work out how to do it. So his story in the book of the ice, and he says that if you want to try this, you better understand ice first, because if you don't, you'll have what happened to us. Yeah. But they got it right. It's been massively successful, and they know you're right. They wouldn't. I'm sure they wouldn't have done it. And I think a lot of us over the years have had Plan B, Plan C. And I hope people do, because I think surviving in today's world is all about having the plans for what if it happened again, and getting them readier than you would have done. And if there are boards of companies, they should be encouraging their teams to be testing, to be exploring, to have Plan B, Plan C. Because, somebody said that I think one of the big consultancies talks about the new normal. And Laura, my line is the no normal. We actually don't think you can plan for a business in a normal time, because there aren't going to, with climate change and other issues around, normal is not the concept. So you need all these alternative plans. You need to be able to alter course and to be ready for it. And that, I think, is what you get from talking to all these people in these different industries and people in their personal lives. Because there's a lot also, there are a lot of people working in our hospitality industry who need to be persuaded to stay with us. We have to provide alternate courses for people who work for us, so they can develop their skills, and because otherwise they'll go. And it's not just at a corporate level. I think the people who work with us need to be able to develop and change and hopefully stay with us as they do. And we have a whole new job to do to help people develop and train, and get new skills, or we are going to be in trouble.
I do think staffing is going to be a big issue across the board. I was chatting to a chap that I know who's got 8 different offices across the globe, and they're struggling with staff in every single office. Yep. And I said, what do you put it down to? And he says, when people are at home and they got bored, naturally, they started to invest in the stock market. This is one example. It goes, so they've done all right, some of them. They can't retire, but they've learned to play the stock market, or invest and increase their wealth. And some people are just saying, I can just do this. Why would I want to come back to work? Or I've got a different job. And, I met a chef who came to my house who was delivering from Tesco. And I says, he just started chatting. I was putting the stuff away. And he goes, I used to be a chef and I'm sick of doing 90 hours a week. Yep. He goes, now I do 40 something. He goes, I get paid for all of them. He goes, if I do overtime, I get paid for that too. He goes, and it's nice. I'm out on the road. I get to meet people. He goes, I'm not stuck in a cramped kitchen. And I said to him, do you think you'll miss it? He goes, well, I don't now. It's not to say I won't, but he goes, at the moment, I don't. And so I think people are all flirting with different sides of, work, whether it's working from home or, I don't think anybody's sitting at home doing nothing, but I think everyone's doing something different. And I wonder if that's going to make full circle.
Well, I was doing a bit of reading and research for the book, and the latest stats are that 40% of those in employment in America don't want to stay doing their jobs. 40%. I mean, maybe there was always that sort of high number, but I'm very struck by the fact that it's given people time to reflect. And there's a line in one of the things I read, which is, you as a company in hospitality, you either are going to be the great attraction or you will face the great attrition. Attraction or attrition, because if you haven't really upped your game and provided more for your people who work with you, they're going to go. And I was one of our first big trips down. We went down to the Dartmouth Food Festival and see all the Rockfish sites and people, and as I was driving down the motorway, first long drive I'd done really for a long time. And stopping at the service stations and going into the male toilets. And there above the urinals are the posters saying, "We will train you as an HGV driver and offer you 40 to 45 grand a year." Well, where does that leave us as an industry? I mean, come on. So, and then, yes, picking up stories from Rockfish and other places of, some brilliant people who left to go and do other things like driving, like delivering.
I was looking at some job listings on Indeed, writing an article the other day, and Amazon offering £3,000 sign up and £18 to £22 an hour. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that it'd be a difficult job. A lot of running around. I guess similar to hospitality, but with targets, a very fast targets. But to a lot of people, £18 to £22 an hour and a £3,000 bonus, okay, I'll have a look at that. And you can't blame them, So it is difficult. How can, especially this industry, because this one we care about, how can we maintain good people?
And I think it is a fantastic industry. I mean, I've watched and shared with people joining as pot washers and ending up running the companies, going off and setting their own companies and doing brilliantly well. It's a great industry if you can really go from anywhere to anywhere, and if you get a good mentor, and there are always. People say, "Oh, you won't get the funding." There's always funding around. There's always angel investors. People love to, I'm doing it. Others like me are doing it, and we can't stop. I've got another couple wanting my help at the moment, both financially and more importantly, they want advice, and they're doing some really interesting things and in hospitality. But what we do is we need to make sure that people who work with us get treated better, and the fact that we've now got Rockfish restaurants closing, not open on a Sunday, not open on a Monday restaurant, a Monday lunchtime. Not all of them, but giving more time to people so that they're not stretched consistently. And I think that there are better ways of working that are coming out of this that will be better for the people we have. Being more caring as employers. The big company jargon, which I don't like, but they are talking about chief learning officers, CLOs, and really, does everybody who works with you have a plan to develop themselves? What do they want to do? Can they go off and do the extra skills? Everybody has got to be digitally advanced now. It's absolutely crucial that digital skills. And if you need help, can we help you do it? So, and I talked with Mitch about having the equivalent of our own open university. Where you want to study something, you want to learn something, you want to go to another company, because in hospitality we've got all sorts of other places where if we work together, we're doing it between the chairman of Rockfish is Will Beckett of Hawksmoor, and the ability to have Rockfish people go and experience Hawksmoor and learn from them, because they are probably the best restaurateurs I've worked with, I think, of many around the world. I'm hard pushed to find a better group of people than the people who work at and work with and run Hawksmoor. And, you know, the opportunities to just swap information and change. And, you know, I definitely think when I did the interview with the Pizza Pilgrims people, and they were talking, Tom was talking about Facebook Workplace and how they'd use that to keep everybody together during the pandemic. And I talked to Mitch about it, and then thanks Tom and the Pizza Pilgrims guys talked to the Rockfish guys, and so the Rockfish then moved to do it as well. And it's ways that we as an industry can work together to help our people feel better. And that communication that they're doing now, so that employees who are feeling distressed can work and get support, you know, is thanks to what's available digitally is all now.
I think the only downside with digital to some degree for employees, I guess, if there's, whether it's WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups for work, it's when do they actually have downtime, because it takes work with them to some degree. And if you imagine, like, let's use your early days as an example, like, or even your middle days, in the 90s, you were working in a business, when people went home at 5 o'clock, generally, except for you or the management, for most people, when they finish a shift, work was finished. And I think now, work and personal life has probably become a lot more converged, and I think, you know, for a lot of people, I know when I talk to a lot of people that run fish and chip shops and so on, they say their phone's always pinging, you know. And so I think it's also trying to have that balance, isn't it? Because otherwise your brain never rests as such.
No, I think and it comes up in the therapy business, in the counselling world a lot, that, you know, you need support and coaching to be able to divorce your personal and your work. They run together, and particularly in hospitality. I mean, you know, find me a successful and independent hospitality person who isn't awake at 3 a.m. I mean, you know, because we all are, well, in my case, have been, but it's a set of disciplines to help you do that, and other things you can do as a company. I mean, we've got paddle boards at Rockfish, you know, and I don't think we've got enough, but there are other things you can do to you know, make it better. That I've got in the book, another one I put some money into in the US, which is called Workforce Athletics, and that's the guy I used to work with, and he and his partner have set up this business which is all about workplace sports leagues. So I mean, I would love to do this. You've got professional coaches who you have your works team. So they've signed up. They've got the exclusive on the Apple campus, which is amazing. They've got Google, they've got LinkedIn, and they all have teams at basketball and soccer. They play each other in leagues. They've got special uniforms. They go on to stadium, college grounds. They have professional coaches assigned to them, and they're all doing it. And you've got the CEO playing alongside the truck driver in teams, and it's a brilliant way of people meeting, and it's really taking off. And it's a great way to get work and sport and fitness and, you know, and people's communicating and enjoying the personal contact in a world where you are going to have far more working from home forever, because that's the way it's going. But when you do get together, getting together in that sort of sports way, I think is just brilliant. I think that business has got a long way to go.
I think health and well-being is such a big thing now, such a big thing. And, you know, when I was looking on Indeed, I was looking at a job offer from, it was Travelodge or Premier Inn, one of the two. And the wage was living wage, you know, and it was a receptionist job, so it wasn't, you know, I don't want to denigrate the receptionist job, but it wasn't a physical job or anything. And it had a free Costco membership, it had a free gym membership, you know, and you could see that the emphasis was health. you know.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think there was something else that it said, so free something, and then free healthcare as well. So you think, you know, yeah, the wage is living wage, but those are the perks. There's an emphasis on being healthy, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be a real big thing moving forward. And I think employers will be taking the lead on that as well, because they want a healthy workforce, you know, and it makes complete sense. One question I wanted to ask you is, in your mind, what do a lot of the chroniclers, what do they have in common?
I think it's what was striking was that how many of them had ideas that were somewhere there but had never come out to see the light of day. That there was great beliefs and passions about other things they could do, and that they hadn't had the time, the space to really think about it, and so if you think about the people, she's got this. It's called Rooters, Rooters with a Z at the end, and it's singing. And she's got this whole mantra. She wants people who can't sing to learn how to sing.
Okay.
And basically, she got these groups together singing reggae, non-singers, and she was teaching them how to sing, and then lockdown hits. And she'd always thought, how could I make this broader? How could I do it in another way where I can get people all together, but on a much broader basis, and not just where I live. So yeah, her name's Ali Cameron Dorr, and she basically got people online because she couldn't get them together because of lockdown, and they're now muting when they're singing, and they're all singing together. And you can imagine the screen there with all these faces, and they're all singing to the same piece of reggae, because apparently reggae is that much easier to sing and to teach. But they're muted, but they're all, and she's got a lovely story of some huge bloke from London who, you know, would never be frightened of anybody, but who's just frightened about singing because he can't sing. But he's now singing wonderfully at home, muted on this, and she'd always wanted to do this, and is now doing it. So I think that point about there are these things that you wanted to do that you got on the back burner, but now that's and most of the stories there are people who've altered course, who've done something that they'd always wanted to do, and some of them have been forced to do them, but by COVID, and I mean, you take Dr. Michael Weeks, who pioneered these testing programs in Addenbrooke's when nobody was really talking about or knowing that asymptomatic transmission of COVID was happening in hospitals. And he and his team stopped all their research and put this program together to develop testing, the early sort of track and trace for hospital workers, which proved that 300 out of 10,000 were going around the wards infecting people because they were infectious, asymptomatic. But his testing program showed that how as a way of proving that people were or weren't infected, and that absolutely radically changed things. They rolled it out across all the Cambridge University hospitals, and then they went and did the same thing with vaccination again, proving that worked, and that all done without funding, sponsorship, or anything else. All done by people in that research. He was a specialist in infectious diseases. He's now Professor Michael Weeks. He got an award for it all that work he did. So I think it's that, again, being able to alter, change, but bring out something that you've always felt you could do more. He says, when you talk to him and interview him, I always thought that we could do more with our skills than we were doing. And I'm now much broader in what I think I could organise. I'm very good at organising, he said, and I didn't realise I was very good at organising. The only thing I'd had to do before was organise my own stag do, because nobody else was capable of doing it. Now I've organised this mass testing programme, and it's worked, and we've saved lives as a result. So there's this inside you, going on again to your question about what do people have in common. I think inside these stories of helping, supporting, people volunteering, there is a great social wanting to help others, and it's much broader than I think people would admit to. I think that the Homo sapiens has much more of a social and supporting side to it than is commonly popular, where we tend to be told all the time about people's greed and the divisions, but you suddenly saw, I'm not so sure that analysis is 100% right. I mean, I think there's a lot more that we've and you'll hear it in these stories, and the people here at Mind, what they do. There's counselling going on in 2 rooms beside us here, where these are volunteers who are professional therapists who are coming in to support clients who basically can't afford the therapy. And so there's a wonderful institution here, and a lot of volunteers coming in and doing things to help others. So, I think you just can't help but be, a bit in awe of these people. I think I am. I mean, I helped my wife run her therapy business for 20 years, but when we've had up to 70 therapists working there, I can honestly say I'm in awe of all of them, because you don't get great income as a therapist. I mean, the sort of hourly charge for psychotherapy, is way below what most other professions with that sort of training get. But they do it because of this desire to support those in need. So, I think we brought out quite a bit of that in the book, not apart from the stuff that I sort of do, which is help businesses make money and grow and all that side of my life. There is this other side that we've got and has been brought to life in pandemic.
So, at the risk of upsetting you slightly, the word pivot has lots of negative connotations. I don't know. I know it feels negative to say it. I don't know why and why people don't like it, and why it's such a stigmatizing word. You've been in business a long time. What would you say? What would you say is the difference between pivoting and altering course, and would it ever stop being a dirty word?
Well, one is jargon. Pivot is there's a whole thing about good things in business get put into business jargon and then get normalised when they shouldn't be. So a pivot is a classic example. When we were researching stories for the book, and we got lots more stories than we got in the book. There's so many great stories from different countries of things people were doing. But I then saw that the Harvard Journal was talking about pivoting, and there was another big consulting firm doing articles on pivoting, and it tended to be all big company focused. They occasionally put in a small company story, but and it's sort of saying here is the year 3 course in pivoting. So pivoting is this, pivoting is that. So I don't like it when they start using jargon and to replace original thinking, and I mean a pivot isn't really, it's a small change in direction, and it's an addition to what you're doing. It's probably going to add value, and I'm not knocking that, but altering course is more dramatic than that. It's doing something that's very innovative and very new and pushes you down a road that is going to be more difficult than this is typical big company. They try and take they put him into committees, silos, where you'll have all these different people all contributing to this idea. The idea then gets taken down to it's just about okay then, and okay, everybody can support it and do it, by which time it's lost its resonance, its innovativeness, and that's one of the reasons I love being in the small company world, because, and I was 17 years, as you know, in the big company world, and I'm uncharacteristically able to compare the two, and I just feel liberated now with the ability to alter course and to support people who are doing that and find ways to support them, rather than have it committed down to a pivot, which is, I mean, language. I shouldn't get so obsessed with language, but I when we did our first book, Marketing Judo, we did a series of. It wasn't Laura; it was another person I worked with, Richard Richardson. We did a whole tour. We got an agent to get us speaking gigs, which was great fun. We went from Paris to Corfu to around the country, and we were on the platform with motivation speakers. Now that was an experience, because you then they would be full of words like pivot and other such wonderful jargon, and they tended to be people who, in my honest opinion, hadn't earned the right to be there. They were professional speakers, professional motivation specialists. They read all sorts of other things from other people, and they put it all together, and here are the 7 rules of what you can do, and the 3 ways to do this. And we both couldn't believe that how did you get this gig? There were very few people who'd actually done businesses themselves and built them up. There were some, but those who tended to I can see it now, the 3 principles of pivoting by, ex-corporate, I have to be careful what language I use, but ex-corporate senior. And I just think we want this to be read by ordinary people, small businesses who don't want to have. I mean, I'm not knocking business books. I read a lot, but there are too many that are written by academics who then go and do research, and they're not really genuine. They haven't earned the right to write them.
Yeah, completely get that. And in your era of running the businesses that you ran, could you think of how difficult it would be? Let's say, what year were you at KFC?
1981 till 1985, 4 years.
So definitely pre-internet. Like there was, we discussed this earlier. There was no internet really, not even for back end. It was fax machine and letters.
Yeah. I started my career. I'm unusual in hospitality because I started in a fast-moving consumer goods world. I worked for Procter and Gamble. I worked for Pepsi in marketing. I worked for Playtex in Paris, which a lot of my male friends are more interested in my career in, and I'm probably one of the few people in hospitality who goes with their wives to choose their undergarments, and I'm an expert. So I've done big companies, I've done a lot of that, and when I started Procter & Gamble, I had a big calculator called a facet machine, which actually was manual. It wasn't even electric. Then I got upgraded in year 2 to an electric calculator. Honestly. But the computers were in a big wing over a big building which housed these massive, great pieces of machinery which churned out the data, and I'd go over there to get the sales report of my brand, and it would chunk out the big pieces of, and I'd come back with this whole wad of paper with all the sales data by region. I mean, so this is what I was walking to a building that was dedicated to. Imagine having your PC there in some huge building that was. So through to KFC, no digital, and when we produced the first book in 20 years ago, we refer to the onset of Google, but it was just kicking off about then. So no, I mean, this digital world is towards the end. I became non-executive director. I was chairman of a company called Zoo Digital in Sheffield, which was in digital technology. So I had to get wised up. I mean, the authoring tools for DVDs, I remember doing a presentation to a city investor because the chairman was ill and the CEO was ill as well. So I did the presentation on algorithms and somehow got away with it. But I'm still to this day not sure how I did.
So you've caught up pretty fast on the digital side then. So
well, my son, who's in that world, would say I still haven't, but I do my best.
You still ring him to sort out your iPhone?
Oh, we ring him to sort out everything. He's brilliant.
So if COVID had landed, let's say in the 90s or even the 80s, how do you see, like, would it have been more challenging for people? You know, would the government have been as supportive? Digital, you know, Hawksmoor couldn't have done steak at home, and I wouldn't have worked with mail order, as in, you know, someone rings up and pays by check, I guess. The internet world gave people so many more...
No, you see, you're there. You could have done that. You could have done. I mean, there was a big mail order business. I mean, here, up in Yorkshire, I mean, massive. Grattan and Next still. I mean, those catalogues. So I mean, back when my first job in Newcastle in the 70s, we had the 3-day week. And you had to be innovative. You had to come up with ways to promote your brand, different things to offset the lack of sales, the production issues. I remember going to my bosses and Procter & Gamble, who'd been started in America by a couple of candle makers. And that's how they got into soap, Mr. Procter and Mr. Gamble. And I said, why don't we do, on a pack of Daz, why don't we do a free candle? So, because we all had candles because we only had electricity. With certain days we've had, it's hard to imagine, but we did. We were power cut. So So I said, why don't we do a free candle? And back to my point about pivoting, and that my idea didn't get much further than my boss, and then it was sort of canned. It was too radical, but actually it was quite a good thought. But we wouldn't, I mean, if we had the things we've been able to do digitally, I take Pat's business, my wife's therapy business, I mean, Zoom has just been a godsend to be able to say to clients, the therapist will Zoom you and you can have Zoom still. And we would have, with a face-to-face therapy business, which was dependent on being in a room, without the internet, you wouldn't have had the support for all these people that we. And what's fascinating about it is that a lot of the face-to-face clients just don't want to come back. Yeah. The therapists are all saying, because we thought we might reopen another building as a therapy centre to replace the one we closed. We actually closed it and sold it to the physio who worked there in one of the rooms, who's done a brilliant job. And the appetite isn't there. The people, neither the therapists nor the clients want to come back face to face. So there will be some, and we're strong believers that face-to-face therapy is better than Zoom therapy because you miss a lot of the physical interaction when I can watch you here at the other side of the table, although we're doing this electronically, and I can see your body and pick up your varying facial expressions, which on a Zoom get cut out and altered and time limited. And so we've written about that in the book as well, in the piece on therapy. But I think that it's been so much better to have the digital side, and that it would have been much harder to cope with COVID without it. But then people's ingenuity, and I'm pretty sure that boxes at home would have been done without the internet. I think we just
maybe a bit slower.
Just
a bit slower.
And checks, contact more, not contact less. That's one of the.
Do you think the government did enough?
Well, it's. I think what they did was pretty extraordinary. I'm for a conservative government to put the amount of public spending into furlough, and I'm amazed. I'm quite quite staggered by the amount of support there's been. On the lockdown side, I'm pretty militant about this. I've got a lot of health workers in my family who've suffered. So I think it's been very erratic, the management of the pandemic from a closure side, and the open close. My daughter's business, where suddenly you have to stop serving in the outside tables. When the outside tables with a tent that's open, is not going to infect, but you suddenly had to close it because that was the latest ruling. So you open, you close, you open, you close. Customers get really frustrated, take it out on the staff, which they did on Susie's staff, which was appalling. So I think there was a lot of erratic management around the management of the pandemic and closing our facilities and then opening them and then not being clear on whether masks work or don't work, and disinformation. So, but then the financial support side, I think definitely it was unfair that those who'd only set up the business in the last year couldn't get any support. I think that was a lack of data, and I think that's wrong. I think that's got to be put right if this happens again. But no, I've been surprised by the levels of government funding that have gone behind it.
I guess there's probably not much difference between the likes of Boris Johnson and Tony Blair, really, in some ways. They must meet in the middle somewhere at the moment in terms of their public spending, let's say. I can't see
how they would have done anything differently.
No.
I mean, I think there are funding issues in the National Health Service, which, and the appalling track and trace. I mean, honestly, I've just been tracked and traced regularly through my COVID, but it wasn't happening when it should have been happening, and the whole process has just been. It's been mismanaged badly. So, I mean, track and trace was definitely that app they were supposed to have early on that never saw the light of day. But we've now got an NHS app, an NHS COVID app. That's come forward a long way. But the management of that side of it, which affected hospitality badly, because we were on the front line having to enforce things that we shouldn't have been having to enforce. That was unfair. And I think the hospitality industry, the lobbying has been as hard and as strong as it could be. And some of our guys have been doing it privately as well as the industry associations. But at the end of the day, there's a limited amount of money you've got, and so the furlough support, I'm quite surprised that we got as much for as long as we did.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've said about regarding like the track and trace and all that, I'm obviously not happy that it didn't go as well as it should, but I've forgiven once. If COVID 2021 happens or something else happens, there shouldn't be any excuse. I think that time we've learned from this, and it's a bit of a cautionary tale. Yeah. If we use COVID-19 as the cautionary tale, we learn from that. Not just this government, I just mean whatever.
Well, the supply contracts, I mean, my nephew talks about this, that never again should they have the lack of PPE in hospitals. I mean, that was appalling. I'm impressed by the level of financial support, appalled by what went on to deny the frontline staff the protection that they needed, and they suffered, and there'd been more.
It's odd though, because a lot of major countries had this problem, and I think because when they've done any forecasting or simulations, it's always been flu being the worst thing. Nobody ever envisaged, and without being racist, they just saw anything like COVID or SARS was an Asian problem, and I think that's been put out of everybody's head.
Well, we've got this whole thing we've been talking about here about the book and business, which is this. Plan B, Plan C. The Plan Bs in this seamless world we live in. You're just a minute supply. The concept of having difficult things that are there in case of and funding them. We've just not done enough in business or in in the world and of health. So I think that definitely, climate change is going to be the next one, and we've got to think about how we're going to react to that, and what are the plans, the plan Bs, the plan Cs, and you can see in the Peter Pilgrims story. I bring it back to me pitching the book, the Peter Pilgrims story about how they sourced basil.
Yeah.
Which was an extraordinary thing, that they 250,000 air miles, they reckon, flying basil in from Genoa and then Israel. And so what they do, a brilliant guy, Gavin, who works for them, comes up and does all of this behind the scenes and gets this basil grown hydroponically. I know the word now, hydroponically, in Dalston. So he's saying in the book, basil da Dalston. And Friarelli, I can't even pronounce it, he's also growing that for them as well. So suddenly you've got all of this locally supplied ingredients that you didn't need to fly in all that way. So that's a classic example of what you can do to protect. And the stories we've got on Santa Cruz bicycles, where they got hit by the fires in California, to the point that, because my son-in-law works for them, and they had employees whose houses were burnt down, and they launched a fantastic program to get people to contribute to community fundraising, to get them the money. The company put money in as well, and they raised loads of money from that. But then the factories couldn't operate, so they didn't get the bikes.
Yeah.
And you just have, Napa Valley got hit by fires, apart from the pandemic. So the world we live in, you're going to really have to think through your plan Bs, your plan Cs, and have them ready.
So I guess the government threw a lot of money at business, and my friend always says that people should be making, putting a pot aside constantly for the rainy day. And more than ever, he was not ready for COVID, because nobody was ready for COVID. But he always said, I've got a bit of money set aside for unexpected days. Now, nobody should say, like I said, if there's something else in 2023, hopefully less people will be caught by a surprise. And I think maybe everyone's going to, siphon off a bit of money, put it in a spare business account, whether it's we have a Ceres savings account, just have it there just in case, rainy day, we dip into it, especially now with inflation of product, we're having to pay a bit more or hold a bit more product, we dip into that.
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah. It's really always been something I've been encouraging. You're lucky enough to have any surplus money, but if you do, definitely have a reserve where, the rainy day reserve and a rainy day plan, a rainy day plan, a rainy day reserve, and maybe you with your team you can think about what might the next pandemic look like, what might it do to me, and then as a person, as an individual, what's my plan B? Because I may be, if restaurants closed again, or this happened, the structural changes that are going on, what am I going to do? What skills might I need? So how can I skill myself up?
Yeah. And
again, I come back to my big pitch about employers helping people do that. The chief learning officer, that if I'm going to help you develop a whole new set of skills so that I can benefit and you can benefit, because we've got, when we're doing digital stuff now, you've got a set of skills that you didn't have before, and I can get you, I'm supposed to be I started life in marketing, and people still see me as a marketeer in some ways, but my digital marketing skills are atrocious, and I'm trying to upskill myself in that area, and we're doing it as we're doing this book, because I'm learning as I go about digital marketing, and so we've all got so much to learn about that area, and restaurateurs who are now getting into digital, will need lots of help and development.
One final topic I really wanted to touch on before we sort of end this is consumers are the most ethically minded they've ever been.
Yeah.
And wages are going up, inflation, food prices are going up. That poses quite a few challenges for restaurants. You know, obviously, you just mentioned Pizza Pilgrims. You know, they've chosen sourcing something that has provenance from abroad that would have been better, let's say, or perceived to be better at the time, and chosen to then get it done locally, which is better in different ways and is still tasty. But they've chosen to go local. How many sort of challenges can the restaurant industry take, and can they evolve through it? Do you think they can see themselves through that? And you know, consumers will be fussier. They'll be spending their money where they think, oh, you know what, they're good to their staff, or they buy local, or there's so many things going on. So what does that pose on the bigger scale?
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder. I mean, stewardship is the concept. I mean, I got that from talking and spending time with the Napa Valley people, is that they view those vineyards as something for posterity. I mean, and it's a lovely, you know, we are stewards. It is nature. These are things that happen on this piece of land, but we are stewards of that, and I think it's a great approach. And we in fish as well, you know, we are stewards of the sea, and we've got to look after the sea. We've got to look after what's in the sea. We've got to be sensitive to it, and so, you know, and be careful that we don't rapaciously, you know, drain the sea of fish. So, and I think there's a real consciousness in the industry about the importance of those raw natural materials and looking after them and sustaining them. What it produces in our industry is, and we saw it in COVID. I mean, we had to reskill, redraw the backs of houses. You know, where we needed to have fewer people there. We had to have simplified menus. But it was interesting because we also learned that there were things that we probably didn't need to have on the menu. There were practices that we could improve. So we got forced through that to change the way we schedule and organise the things we do. So and that has actually worked, and I think they are good, positive things. Pricing pressure is going to be really tough. Staff availability, just really, really difficult. But I'm, you know, what you get again from when you feel like that, and there are lots of negatives in the industry, that there are so many positives. There's so much creativity. There are so many people, as we've tried to capture in the book too, so many people having new thoughts, trying new things. And I'm, you know, you take fish and chips, which you're very close to. Back when we were doing it, forever surrounded by, fish and chips, that's yesterday, it won't last, you know, no, and here we are. You know, you've got some fantastic examples of hugely successful fish and chip empires that are carrying on. But up in the northeast, where we go a lot, in Amble, with Christmas Eve, we're going to the fish shack with the family. Yeah. Hugely, the boathouse, same owners. I can come down that coast and pick place after place that's doing brilliant fish and chips. Yeah, I was told all those years ago that it was yesterday's food and wasn't going to last. So my point being, resilience, reinvention, creativity are there. Probably more in hospitality. I've worked in loads of different industries, as you know, and as a non-executive director more recently, but I've spent most of my career in hospitality, and of all of them I've been involved in, I think hospitality has more creativity than the others. I think that there's something about the everyday serving of customers and watching the changes and being sensitive to the needs of customers that makes us a particularly creative group of people. So no, it's tough. I'm not sure our attractiveness to outside investors is as good as it was. I think they're wrong, by the way, because I think if you have a really well-managed group that has creativity and can exploit all the digital opportunities that are there now, as we've shown in the book, and people are doing, Hawksmoor, their boxes Pilgrims with a pizza in the post, Rockfish with our boxes, and seafood going directly to people, then, I think we are still a very attractive investment proposition.
I think so. Have I missed anything? Would you like to, maybe, make a little shout out to anybody? I'm going to encourage people to get the book, and like I said, I'm going to get a few as well and give some.
Thank you.
So.
I know we know a lot of people in common. There's some great people who inspired me in the fish and chip industry, and maybe we'll do that another day. But
and I think most people might be thinking, now, they've hinted at a few things here, but what I wanted to do with this episode is really focus on the book, because there's so many great stories, and what I didn't want to do is talk about your sort of career, which is great in itself, but I think that deserves another episode in my view.
Thank you.
So what I'm
don't wait too long. You never know.
It'd be fine. Honestly, you've really built up this image now. Everyone's probably thinking, he must be in a wheelchair or something.
No, he's not.
But no, and I think for me that's what I was really sort of, when I was doing my prep yesterday, and I was sort of throwing in some of your career things, and then a friend of mine said, no, just focus on the book tomorrow, and just bend his arm on getting him on for the other things later. And I think, but I think people can sort of get the hint that you have had a varied history, and we will touch on that in the next episode.
Thank you.
I think.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Stelios.
Thank you for your time today.
Okay.
I want to say a massive thank you to John Barnes for joining me on the Ceres podcast. I, for one, have really enjoyed the book. It's really light-hearted. It's a light-hearted collection of not just business stories, but organisational stories, that make you really think about your business and how tragedy has to make you change course. Remember, we have bought 10 copies of Altering Course. The 10 people to get in touch with us via info@worldofceres.com will get a free copy in the post. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends on social media. If you like the episode, then chances are they will like it too.